When this young mother offered up her plane seat to an old veteran, she simply thought she was doing a nice thing. She switched with him and sat down in the row of chairs behind him, but then she accidentally discovered his identity and turned pale instantly. But before we start, smash the like button, subscribe, and ring the notifications bell so you never miss our upcoming stories. Emma Bright and her daughter Rosie had been sitting in their airplane seats for almost an hour. The plane was stuck on the turf for an unknown reason, which annoyed Emma. "We're going to be glued to the ground longer than the actual flight," Emma spoke softly. But then suddenly, an old man stepped in. Immediately, Emma's irritated facial expression changed to a softer one. She figured the pilots were probably waiting for this old man to arrive. He looked ancient and was moving very slowly, but he also bore a kind smile that melted her heart a bit. The old man took a seat in the row behind Emma and her daughter. Emma smiled politely and returned to cuddling her baby girl. But then she heard something. The old veteran behind her was moaning and making all kinds of noises that indicated discomfort. "Are you all right, mister?" Emma asked as she turned around to check on his situation. The veteran responded by saying that he was well enough. He had old bones, and the lack of legroom and the hard seating bothered him a bit. It also wasn't the best idea for him to pick a seat by the window because he had a weak bladder and surely had to pee during this flight. But again, he stated that this wasn't her problem. But after the old man stopped talking, Emma did something beyond friendly. She and her daughter had a seat in the front row of the plane, so no row of passengers were seated in front of them. They had legroom for days. That's why Emma picked up her baby girl and offered to trade places. The veteran was shocked by her suggestion and was hesitant to accept, but Emma insisted. She already stood at his row, urging the man to get more comfortable in her old spot. The veteran thanked Emma kindly, but she said that there was no need, not knowing that her biggest gift was yet to come. While switching places, Emma read the lettering on the man's hat. According to the inscription, he served in not just one, but 2 wars. A true hero. Emma thanked the old veteran for his services to this country before taking a seat behind him. But then something very interesting happened. Emma was staring out the window of her new seat when a sound appeared from the airplane seat in front of her. It was the sound of pages turning. The pages sounded heavy, to think for a reading book. Emma was curious at heart and chose to peek through the gap in the backrest. Emma saw how the old man was looking through a thick photo album. The pages were quite yellowed, indicating that the book was at least a couple of decades old. Emma saw multiple black and white photos of soldiers in the field. The young mother put 1 and 2 together and figured they must have been his wartime comrades. Emma felt a warm feeling of compassion well up in her heart, but then it screeched to a halt when she heard the veteran sob during his look-through. The man ensured that he was fine and continued his look-through. That was until he stopped at a very specific page. The curious mother was still secretly watching along and admiring the man's album, and then she saw the picture that changed everything. Emma gasped for air out of pure shock and held a hand before her mouth to avoid further sounds. The young mother became too restless to stay seated in her new chair, so she walked to the row where the veteran was. She tapped the shoulder of the sleeping woman who sat beside him. "I'm sorry, miss. Is it all right if we switch seats? I really need to talk to this man." The woman looked at Emma's empty seat by the window and agreed. She planned on sleeping the entire flight anyway, so she didn't care. Emma was glad that she agreed and sat down next to the veteran. The veteran was confused about Emma's choice to switch back seats again, and it didn't help that the restless mother looked at him with large, googly eyes. "Can I help you, miss?" Emma replied by asking about the book he held. "What is this book, sir?" So he ruffled through some pages and showed Emma the book's contents. "I fought in 2 large wars for my country. The first was in 1945 when we invaded Normandy during WW2. And the second war I served was in Korea. These are pictures of those times." He spoke of the battles and told Emma about his fellow soldiers, whom he viewed as his closest friends for most of his life. War creates an unbreakable bond, you know. Emma sat there quietly and listened, but that was not all. Because with every page he turned in his book, Emma's eyes widened a bit more. The old veteran thought that it was because she found his stories fascinating. And that was partially true, but the real reason was because he got closer to that specific page again. "Can I see one photo, please?" Emma asked. Emma explained the picture she had witnessed before, and the old man knew exactly which one she was referring to. He flipped through a few more pieces of parchment And then something bizarre happened. The picture was revealed, and Emma immediately started crying softly, even hugging the old man for some reason. She wiped away a few tears and asked the veteran to tell her about the picture, which the man gladly did. During the rest of the flight, the veteran shared intimate stories about the men in that specific photo. As with every detail revealed, Emma's expression became more emotional. After about an hour, the airplane landed, and the veteran thought that their lovely time together was over. But Emma had other plans. She asked the old man to follow her into the airport's arrival hall. There was something she needed to show him. "Please trust me." Emma, her daughter, and the veteran stepped into the arrival hall together and were immediately greeted by a middle-aged man. Emma ran to him, stating that he was her father. "Just one moment, please," Emma said to the veteran before whispering something in her father's ear. The moment Emma did this, her father had the same emotional reaction as she did on the plane. Tears filled the man's eyes as he asked the veteran about his business in their city. The veteran explained that he was asked to give a college hearing tomorrow about his experience in war. Both father and daughter nodded and asked the veteran if he had a few hours to spare. They had something important they wanted to show him. "What is it?" the veteran replied, but according to Emma, it was a surprise. The veteran was hesitant. Yes, he had time to kill. But following a relative stranger to an unknown destination was not something he had planned for prior to his flight. The veteran scanned Emma's face again and saw a careful smile as she wiped away another tear. And in the end, it was that trustworthy face, combined with her interest in his life, which made the veteran agree to come with them. They stepped into Emma's father's car together. After that, they drove away from the airport and past the hotel he was supposed to stay in. The car quickly traded in the busy cityscape for a more quiet suburban environment. Trees filled these streets, and small cute houses lined the concrete pavement. The veteran asked once more where they were going, but again, Emma did not provide a clear answer. The car stopped in front of the smallest house in the neighborhood. It was old but homely. Emma and her daughter had already gotten out and were opening the front door when the veteran exited the vehicle. But Emma simply invited him inside by extending her arm and gesturing the veteran to come closer. The house had a 60s feel about it. Orange drapes hung before the windows, and a light, musky smell hung in the house. The old man looked forward and saw how Emma and her father stood beside a large chair in the living room. It was facing backward, but the veteran saw that someone was sitting inside of it. He only saw the top of a gray-haired person, but that was about to change. After Emma finished talking, the seated individual stood up and faced the veteran. It was an elderly man who was at least the same age as him. But who was this person? The mysterious elderly man looked up at the veteran with squinted eyes. But after a few confusing glances, his eyes widened, just like Emma's and her father's did before. "Charles, is that you?" The elderly man walked up to Charles and hugged him intensely. Charles stood frozen in place as the old man squeezed his body while crying. But roles were about to flip when his grip loosened, and Charles saw his face up close. The recognition hit him instantly, and Charles broke down in tears. Charles now hugged the old man back and started spitting questions because he had many. He mostly had them for Emma since she started this wild journey. "How did you know who I was when we were on the plane?" Emma smiled and stated that his question had an easy answer. "The man you're hugging right now is my grandpa. He told us many stories about a guy he met during his time in the U.S. Army. Apparently, this person saved my grandfather's life many times. And that man is you, Charles. You were my grandfather's best friend during his time in the Army. And according to my dear granddad, he would not have been alive today without you." Emma thanked Charles for all that he did for her granddad during wartime. And then she revealed why she knew he was the right person from the start. It was a picture frame, the exact same photo that Charles had in his album. It was Grandpa's prized possession, an object that reminded him of his best friend, someone he thought he had lost forever. But apparently, that wasn't the case. "When I saw that picture on the plane and saw your face, I instantly knew who you were, and I also knew that I had to reconnect you two." Charles was stunned by Emma's story. He couldn't believe that such a simple moment could lead to such an amazing reunion. He thanked Emma from the bottom of his heart and promised to repay her sometime, somehow. But Emma didn't need any repayment. "You have already done enough," she said. Charles nodded and placed his photo album flat on the table. He ruffled through it and revealed that page that had the photo of the two of them together. Charles took over the conversation at that point and stated that the two of them were indeed best friends during wartime. They had each other's back, and Charles also confirmed that he saved Emma's clumsy grandpa multiple times in the heat of battle. But during their last mission, something went wrong. A minefield lay between them and their enemy, and Charles watched how William crossed it bravely with other troops. But right before he reached the very end, a massive explosion occurred. Charles never saw his friend again after that moment, and he believed that William was blown to bits on that day. In wartime, it is always bad news when a soldier goes missing, and when you don't hear from them again afterward, it can only mean one thing: a silent soldier is a dead one, Charles stated. "How the hell did you survive that explosion?" Charles asked his old friend. Emma's grandpa stated that the entire battle moment felt like a blur. He remembered crossing that damn field and almost reaching the other side unscathed. But then, one of the soldiers who ran beside him stepped on a mine, which caused the explosion. "The next thing I remembered is waking up in a field hospital." Emma's grandfather wasn't directly hit by the blast, even though it looked like that from afar. Charles nodded, saying that he thought he lost his friend that day. However, the debris caused by the explosion did contact William. He arrived at the hospital with scrap metal in his leg and was deemed unfit for combat. I was sent home after that and never returned to war again. Once my commanding officer told me that we lost the battle that day and stated that the entire battalion was wiped out. The two friends hugged each other once more and instantly felt a rekindled bond. So, the two veterans spent the rest of the day talking, smiling, and reminiscing about the good old days. And Emma was extremely happy to see her grandpa smile like that again. It had been a long time since she had seen such joy on his face. Since that moment in Williams's home, the two men had become irreplaceable once more, and they even spent Christmas together that year. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and ring the notifications bell so you never miss amazing tales like this one.